Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Creating Curriculum-Specific Materials for Speech and Language Therapy Goals. Thank you for those that have joined us. Please note that today's webinar will be recorded for you to access after the webinar. It will also be available for those that did not make it today, and this webinar is also going to be a listen-only webinar. So if you do have questions, please type them in the chat box and we'll endeavour to answer them as we go. However, it's likely that we answer them at the end of the webinar. If you're having any troubles with sound, please indicate in the questions box and we'll do our best to try to help you. So, as I said, welcome to today's webinar. It's entitled Creating Curriculum-Specific Materials for Speech and Language Therapy Goals. I wanted to start by asking some questions to indicate who we have available in the room so that we know. So here is today's first question. So if you can just indicate who you are. Great. Just so we understand who everybody is. So it looks like we've got a good split, but the majority today are speech and language therapists or speech language pathologists. Our second question, have you heard of Colour Cards apps before? Okay, I'm pleased to hear most people have. And then finally, do you currently use that Colour Cards apps? Okay, so it sounds like most people haven't used the apps before. So I'll make sure to give a really thorough introduction to the apps, and therefore you may be even more interested in our special offer for attendees. And this is a time-limited offer for 24 hours that you can buy any of the 5 apps in the Colour Cards range for just $1.99 or £1.49 each. So that's a tremendous saving. So take advantage if you are part of the 90% of attendees who haven't used the apps before. Okay, so today the plan is to be really practical and hands-on. I'm going to spend the majority of the time going through some specific examples of how to use the apps, how to make the content relevant to curriculum or indeed to specific topics, how to take images, upload them, how to select and create content, how to create sequences using the sequencing apps, and then we're going to briefly look at reporting at the end to round things off. So that's the plan for today. If you have questions along the way, please let me know and I'll do what I can to answer them as we go. As you can see down the bottom, there are 5 Colour Cards apps in the range. We have everyday objects, what can you see, and then there are 3 sequencing apps, basic sequences, 4-step sequences, and 6 and 8-step sequences. They're all available on iTunes for the iPad. If you have had the Colour Cards box sets, you may recognise these titles, and indeed they've been designed to be very true to the original, but while adding some really cool features that make them even more of a useful tool. The apps have been designed to be used with a caseload, so you can use it with multiple students or with multiple patients. They're designed to be used with or by therapists or parents, and certainly can be used in conjunction with your Colour Cards box sets if you have them already. Right, as I said, today's presentation is the most practical of the series of webinars that we've run so far, and I'm really going to spend the majority of the time giving you specific examples of ways to use the apps to support curriculum-based content. and we're going to make sure it's as practical as possible. I'll try to go quite slowly and talk through as much as I can about what I'm doing so that you can see on screen what's happening, and I'll be sharing that on the iPad screen. Give me a minute while we flip over. There's always a little time delay to enable that switch. And very soon you'll see my iPad come up on screen. Oops. Sorry, it's just taking a little bit of time to switch over. I'll just go. Great. So here you can see the iPad on my screen. I'm going to talk you through what we're doing. I'm going to start with an example looking at the app called Everyday Objects, which you'll be familiar with the box set perhaps, or you'll be familiar with the variants of this app. There's lots of color cards boxes in this range. So this app is Everyday Objects. We're going to look at how we can create very basic content. The app is designed to be used, as I said, with a caseload. So you can see in the top corner the picture of John, who's my example of a client today. So I can certainly personalize that for him. So I'm going to set up tasks for him. I've tapped on the spanner in the bottom left corner, which is the settings button, and that brings me to this screen, which is game setup. I will then want to go into making some of the content that he's going to use. Now the app does come with lots of great factory content. You can see here some of those. So for example, you can see some pictures that you'll be familiar with from the box sets if you have those. And they've graded into easy, medium, and hard. And I'm just toggling through those. There's a little bit of a lag I can see on the screen with how quickly you're seeing what I'm seeing. But I can toggle through those. And then I can scan up and down and find the images I want. What I've done today is added images to my photo bank, and I'm going to show you how I went about doing that. For example, I added in that image there you can see of the planets and some other photos there as well. I'm going to add some more content in so you can see how we do that, and then we're going to look at the reveal game within Everyday Objects. So we have the picture of the planets. I have some nice examples of other photos, but I'm going to add in some specific photos of individual planets within this. So I go to the button at the top of my page, which is of the two squares, and I take that, come to the section called Add Card. Here I tap on the cross in the middle and then choose Take from Gallery, and it's going to bring up all of the photos that are already on my iPad in the photo library. So let's take this picture of Earth that I have in there, and I'm going to tap on Use, and we can see that it wants me to choose the level of difficulty. In this case, I'm going to choose Easy, and then type in a label for this button. And then once I do that, I exit by tapping on Activity Setup, the back out arrow, and you can see then that that image is now sitting within the image library for the app. So it's moved from the image library on the iPad to being in the app. So now I want to set up an activity for my client about planets. I'm going to choose the image of all of the planets and then the image of Earth. So I have two pictures, and I can see them that they've been highlighted and they have the number next to them on the screen once I choose those to show that they're the images that I've chosen for the activity. And I then come back out and I'm going to go into the game, and I'm going to, in this example, show you both describing and reveal so you can see those. Let's start with describing. So I choose describing.
Tell me about this.
And you can see it brings up an image that we selected just before. So you've got the image of the planets, and then if, for example, the curriculum topic was space or planets, we can have the app help us in working on goals related to either descriptive language skills, narrative, or particular grammatical skills that we were working on. So the nice thing about the apps is that you have the record button at the top of the screen, and I tap on that and it starts the ability to record, and then I can describe here are the planets, I can see the Sun, I can see Uranus, Neptune, Venus, and so on. And when I'm finished, I just press on tap, and then I have the option to press the play button next to the microphone to hear that back. And then the client themselves, or perhaps the teacher, parent, or therapist working with them, has to, or can choose down the bottom of the screen whether the child was correct, and you can see the tick mark in the circle, correct with help, or incorrect. And I've chosen correct here, and then you'll see we'll get some sort of a visual reinforcement where the picture zooms in and out. It's a little hard to see in the reflection of the app on the screen, I know, and then we'll transition to the next image. And you can see here I chose here's the second picture that we chose. So if I was talking about the solar system or planets, I could very easily build that content into my library. And I can then, for example, say correct with help. Maybe the student needed help to describe or name what was happening in that picture, and that pops up. And then I'm brought to a panel where I can view the results if I want to. So I can tap on view results and then see how my client did with that. And you can see how we recorded the audio on the first image for the picture of all the planets. There's a button on there I can tap to hear that audio back. And if you see up at the top right-hand corner next to the envelope, which indicates emailing out, I can also export the audio. But we're going to come back and look at reports in a little more detail in a minute. I'm going to take you to the next example, and I want you to think about an example where you're working on vocabulary or content related to plants and life cycle, so perhaps a science-based topic, and we're going to look at how we could build in content to reflect working on things like life cycle of a plant. Okay, so to do that, I go into the settings button again, and I'm going to check, but I've got the images already built in for my plant life cycle, and you'll see that in a second when it comes up on screen. So I went to add or edit sequence. I then can see the image of the seed, and that's the sequence that I created before, and you can see some other ones I've created that we'll go through in a minute. I come back out. Now we're going to do the ordering task, so I tap on ordering as select images for, or select sequences for ordering, and then I'm going to choose just the image related to the plant life cycle. So I tap on the image of the seed there that you can see, and at this stage we're just going to use one sequence within our task. I come back out and go to the ordering game. Come back and go to the ordering game. Sorry, I've come out. Yeah, let me come back in. And we'll be able to see the images that we chose before, and what we need to do is to move them into the correct order. So here are the pictures that I uploaded earlier. You'll see those in a second when they come up. There's a little lag between the webinar and my screen in real time, and then I drag the images into the order, and then you'll see you'll get a nice visual reinforcement once that's correct. So I'm dragging them into the right order, and when I'm correct you'll see the visual reinforcement. So that's great, and I can mark that that's correct. Now, one of the nice things about the Color Cards apps is that you can mark whether someone was correct or correct with help and override the in-app responses. I have lots of clients where this is the really nice part of therapy, where you tell them, oh, actually that's not right, or try again. And they say, but hang on, this is why I've put it in that order, for example. And this is why you can override the answers, which I think makes it a nice feature. So that's how I can build up a sequence like that. If, for example, I was working on another task, so for example, this time let's look at a potential maths topic. Let's look at choosing some images related this time to fractions. So I've loaded up some images related to fractions. We're going to go back and see those. Actually, let's go back in. I'm going to show you how I'm going to add an additional fractions image at this point. So I'm going to go to the back into editing, sorry, up to the button at the top, and then I'm going to add the individual photos that are needed for my new fractions task, which I've got some great pictures here for, so you can see that here. So I can add in this case 3 pictures in basic sequences, so I can use 3 different ones, and I can add those images in one by one. So I find them in my photo library and then add those in. So we're in this case maybe getting the student to order the fractions from smallest to largest. So I add the images in. Let's choose how difficult they are. Give a name, come back out, and then we can choose to start that activity for the ordering task. Oops. So if we choose one of the fractions there. So I've got 2 different examples. We come back into ordering.
Please put the cards in the correct order.
And my goal here would be to have the student move them into the correct order, and when they were correct, they would have that reinforcement. So you can see we use the images to make one series, and then here's the one that we made just now. So again, I can just move those into the correct order, and it's a really simple task. The content could be anything. It could be pictures of pizza slices, cake slices, whatever you wanted to represent fractions. So that's how that task looks. So that's another example of how we can create some basic sequences. If I was to come into the more advanced level, so we've got color cards 6 and 8 step sequences, which I'll tap on there. And this time I'm going to load up, and this is going to be a bit of a challenge, but I'm going to load up all of the planets, or 8 planets in this case, to then sequence in the correct order. So I go into my settings, and you'll see from the apps they're all very similar to each other. The way that you access them is similar. And I'm going to add new pictures to my sequence. In this case, it's going to be the pictures from my library based on the solar system. Well, actually, I better put them in the right order. That it's going to be my challenge. So we need, what do we need first? Mercury. This one says it's Mercury, okay. And then we need Venus. So these are pictures I've taken as screen grabs in Google Images, or I could be taking, I could be doing taking photos or photos that I have on file that I can load up. So here you can see you would continue on until you loaded up each of the images that you needed for the task to be able to create the sequence. So in this case, you can go up to 8. It also has in 6 and 8 sequences, as the name suggests, you also have the option of adding a 6-step sequence. So there's Jupiter, and then we need Saturn. Sorry, this is a real test of my memory of the order of the planets. Then we have Saturn, okay, Uranus, and finally Neptune. So we add each of the images in one by one. Poor Pluto, give me a maximum 8-step sequences. Unfortunately, poor Pluto gets left out, but so I can save that, and then that will be available as a sequence in my content to then set up the activity for ordering or for describing. So we can choose those images that we want to use in that task. So we come back out and we go into back into the game, and you can see one by one I'm going to have each of the planets there. There's a little bit of a lag between my screen and yours again. So okay, so we go into describing. There you go. You can see each of the planets one by one, and then you've got the microphone again where I can record each of the images as we go. So I could be recording the names of the planets perhaps in order, and we can save that, and at the end of the task we have the opportunity to export that as a file again. Then I can indicate whether the student was correct or incorrect. And it works like that. So you've got lots of nice options for even using the more advanced app with sequences, 6 and 8 step. I'm going to flip back now to basic sequences to give you an idea of how I can also use the sequences apps for working on other skills related to the curriculum. So if in this case I was working on a sentence construction, I've loaded up in this case an example which is based on me writing the components of a sentence, a 3-part sentence. Let's choose that. I can go back now. This I did just with handwriting on the notes on my iPad and took a screenshot. You'll see how simple this is. Oops, I've still got my fractions. Let's go back. I must have left my fractions selected. Oh, yeah. Okay, so now we've just got the words. Come back into ordering. So you can see here I've managed to write a sentence, and I move those into the correct order so that we can see that. And then as usual, you'll get the normal flashing colors to indicate that that's correct or not. So that's the example for how you might use it with using words. So you can just write using the notepad on your screen, and you can have the student drag the sentence into the correct order. So we have that as an example. And then finally, if we were looking at personal development based topics or hygiene, independence, those sort of skills, it's a really nice example to be able to add in sequences related to that. So here you can see I've made a sequence of a little girl brushing her teeth. And so I've got 3 different photos and I can use that. So here are the steps for a girl brushing her teeth. I can move those into the correct order. And when I'm correct, have the student describe what the correct sequence is, or what they do to brush their teeth in the morning, or you can use it for a whole range of other personal care tasks as well. Also nice to be able to add content for narrative skills or for description. I've got some nice photos I put onto my iPad yesterday that I can use, so I'm going to create a sequence with those. So we're going to add, and I'm just going to show you briefly again how you can add content in from your gallery. So here I can either take the images from my photo, from my camera on the iPad, or I can go into my gallery. I'm going to go into my gallery and choose some of these nice images of familiar classroom tasks. And I'm going to use those in a predicting task in a second. So I've loaded up 3 images. You'll see those one by one. And then I will go into choosing those for a predicting task this time. Okay.
Choose how many cards, 1 or 3. Please predict what is happening in the mystery card.
Okay, there's a little bit of a lag again between your screen and mine, so I'll just wait for that to come up on yours. Okay, so you can see here the child is prompted to predict what happens next. So if these would, what happens in the daily routine in the classroom, you could have them describe each of those steps and then say what happens next. So what happens after story time, and then music, and then circle time. The child can predict what happens next. So it's a nice task for using in the classroom. So that's there's some really practical examples of how we can use the app within with curriculum-based tasks. I'm going to take off mirroring and come back to my presentation now. Just bear with me. Excuse me. Okay, so that's some really practical suggestions, I hope. I'm now going to talk a little bit about the reporting and the measurement opportunities that the apps present. The reporting tool that you saw is consistent across the apps, so it allows for in-app reporting, but also adding observations from outside of the app. Each of the apps is consistent with how that looks. See here the progress in this example over time. So you can compare from session to session. You can also go into each session one by one and look at what happened. You can export that. Here's another example. So you can have multiple students or patients and you can see each of them one by one as you go through. You can annotate those, you can export them. They stay within the app, but you can also share out the results. So that means that parents can share results with yourself and vice versa. It really is designed to be quite flexible. So that's the reporting tool, and as I said, it's consistent across each of the apps so that you only have to learn how to interpret them once, and they're very simple and straightforward anyway, and share them with family or with other stakeholders. So that concludes our webinar for today. I hope it's been really practical. And if you have any questions, please continue typing into the question box. I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that have popped up in the question box. So bear with me for a second. I'm just going to have a look at those. question about how we use the webinar software, so that because one of the attendees is wondering how they can use them with their clients online. The GoToMeeting software is something you need to purchase a license for separately, and you need to be able to set up to mirror your iPad, and you can see that there's a bit of a delay with that. And there is a bit of a lag with projecting that, but that's we can tell you more about GoToWebinar another time if you have questions about that. Somebody's asked about the automated voice in the app. That can certainly be turned off if you don't like, if you don't need that, or the client would find that distracting. So that's a setting that can be turned on or off. I know that there was a bit of a lag today with the demonstration and my voice, so some people found that a little hard to catch on, so I'm sorry if that was the case. Unfortunately, some days it does seem to have more of a lag than others. Another question about the cropping of the pictures. Some of mine today, with the writing, I noticed that I probably centered it really poorly, but you can certainly move those around and adjust how that image looks within each of the pictures, so that you've got, so that they're optimal for the screen and for the task that your client's working on. And there's another question about how you could use the apps for literacy. I think there are lots of ways you could use it for literacy related goals. Just a couple that spring to mind. For example, you could use the everyday objects, or what can you see apps, and have the images, and have the child work on writing a sentence on a pen and paper next to the app to describe what they're seeing. You could do sentence construction in the sequencing app, like I demonstrated earlier. Lots of ways you can do that. You could work on having pages of a book in everyday objects and flick through those one by one, and have the client record themselves reading aloud and listen back. I think there's lots of ways you could use it to support literacy skills. Someone's asked if the data syncs between the apps. It doesn't, because we want to keep those separate, because that they need, for the data stays within the app, which is one of the important things for data protection, and you can share that out from the app, but there's not a way of, at the moment, of syncing those between the apps. Parents can definitely use this app at home. It's, as I said, because the reporting allows you to share results out, you can share that with a speech therapist or a teacher if you wanted to, but parents could definitely be using this at home. It's designed to be very intuitive and easy to use, and the real beauty of the app is that you can populate the content yourself, so you can use pictures from around the home, use your own images. You know, if for example you wanted to put in all of the child's toys or food items or clothing, you know, that really is quick because it's on the iPad, so you can just use the camera on the device itself. Another question, no, unfortunately it's not available on Android at the present, but I'm sure I can pass that back to Color Cards. And that looks like it. So thank you very much for lots of questions this afternoon. There is a handout available which will be sent around to everybody after the webinar, and you can also go back and watch this again. And if you have any questions about the price, you're welcome to contact Color Cards about that, or if you have any questions about the apps, please do feel free to contact them after this webinar. On that note, I'll say thank you, and we look forward to speaking to you on the next webinar. Thanks very much. Bye.